What an idiot. What an absolute idiot. I've hit go live by mistake at 9:58. I was actually trying to tweet something. Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the United Stand 2 minutes early. I need to tweet in a minute, but let's open the show up with lots to talk about. I've never done that before. Amorim, serious about Gyokeres. We'll be talking about that. Also, Rashford. Oh, I'm so flustered. Panicking. Rashford is going to get a new role, apparently. I'm thinking, I haven't got my notes. Garnacho, off to Real Madrid or Barcelona. Nicky Butt, who I like listening to, gives his thoughts on that as well. Also, we're going to be talking about Malacia's return. He's been talking about that. Chris Rigg, could he be heading to Manchester United? Anana. And also, I want to talk about Ineos and their transfers. Ashan says, you're on time. I'm not on time. I've completely messed up here. I'm literally 2 minutes early. What I meant to do was click the link to set up the tweets. And what I actually clicked was go live. It's a big button if you've ever been in the back system of YouTube. So yeah, I'm a bloody prat. I'm a bloody prat. But I should be able to do this and get into it. Don't forget tomorrow, by the way, I will shamelessly plug this. We are live tomorrow all day on my That's Football channel. For raising money for people with terminal illness. It's an all-day stream. I'll do the morning show on here, and then we'll go straight into that on there. So get involved with that tomorrow. All the links and today as well. Hopefully. What the fuck's going on here? I'll tell you what, it's all going wrong this morning. And also, I'll talk about my career mode later because I could be playing in the Europa League final and putting the suit on. But let's start off about Gyokeres. So numerous stories coming in, and a very interesting one actually coming in from the Braga coach. What's going on here? The Braga president about Gyokeres. But look, it's a really interesting situation with regards to what might happen with him, because I think that Man United at the moment are very much firm favourites to get Gyokeres, whether it's the bookies, etc. But also, I think it's quite interesting with regards to how we've got a quote coming in from Amorim as well. I'm really excited. I think I am where I'm supposed to be. That's the feeling. Lovely stuff. His interview will be coming out today, by the way. We've got sort of a rough idea of when that might be coming out, if you remind me as well. But look, very, very much back to the Gyokeres thing, and I think it's really interesting that we are favourites to get him. But this was what the president of Braga had to say about Ruben Amorim and about Gyokeres. Antonio Salvador, who gave Amorim his big coaching break at Braga, has had this to say about Gyokeres potentially joining Manchester United or anybody else. He says he's got doubts about him playing for a top European club. He added that he doesn't even know whether Amorim will be able to get him out of Sporting or whether the striker would fancy a move to Old Trafford, but he thinks he would slot into Amorim's tactical approach at United. He said, I don't know. There are players that Ruben Amorim believes in to death. I don't know if it will be Gyokeres or someone else. I think he's a great player, but I don't think he plays for all the big European clubs. In Ruben Amorim's system, he can play, but I'm not going to give an opinion right now. I don't know if he's capable of getting him or if we will get him, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. And I think the interesting thing for me there about Gyokeres is, and I don't think people are considering this because there's certainly serious interest from Amorim to get him in the summer. And there will certainly be serious interest from Ineos to get that player if that's the one that Amorim wants. So I think him being the favourite, a lot of people talking about him. We know this is going to be mentioned for the next 6 months, whether we like it or not. But I think the signs of Gyokeres coming to Man United obviously are real. But there are also other aspects to it. I mean, Arsenal are a very strong favourite to get him as well, as has been stated by many people. And I think, but I think that's one of the most interesting things I've actually read by anybody about Gyokeres, in the sense that he is a player that would, I suppose, not necessarily work for Real Madrid or Arsenal or Liverpool or anybody else. I mean, that's what the Braga president is saying. Very, very good player, but specifically suits the Amorim system really well, which obviously, if the player realises that, you don't want to go and play for a team where you don't necessarily fit in. So I think that in itself is quite an interesting one, and certainly, you know, we better get ready for a summer of that and the next 6 months of that as well, because we are going to be heavily linked to him. Looking forward to tomorrow, Mark, says Owen Clark. Hi, Mark. I love you. Should we use wing backs? Says Dion. I'm just going to completely ignore that. But interestingly as well, just on the striker situation, what are your thoughts on it? I saw something yesterday about how Gyokeres went from Coventry to Sporting at exactly the same time that Rasmus went from Atalanta to Manchester United. One went for nearly £70 million. The other went for around £20 million. And I just think sometimes football analysis is so bad. Like, it really is. Like, they want to take a piece of cheese and a piece of chocolate and, you know, say which is the better cheese. And the reality is they're very different situations with very different tastes. And I think with Gyokeres to Sporting from Coventry and Atalanta with Rasmus to Manchester United is just completely different. Completely different. Atalanta to Man United, the focus, the step up is huge. Coventry to Sporting, it's not the same. On top of that, Sporting had won titles already. They were already one of the best teams in Portugal. You're going into a system that works with a manager that's got a system that works. Rasmus coming into a Man United side, we're not one of the best teams in England at that time. We go and have one of the worst seasons we've ever had in relation to injuries. The club gets taken over halfway through. The scenarios are completely different. So I don't look at Gyokeres and Rasmus as, oh, you look at this, look at that. I look at it and go, we probably do need another striker. We have a very young striker that I think is going to have 6 months to show what he's all about. And if he does really, really well, we might not even go for Gyokeres. But if he does want another striker in the summer, then maybe you do that. And it's also interesting when you look at it that Marcus Rashford, there's a few stories this morning saying that Marcus Rashford might actually have a new role at United under Amorim as a striker. And I mean, look, I want to run a poll on this. Do you see Rashford as a striker? How would you word that? Should Rashford play as a striker? Yes or no? I suppose that just sort of gives it there, doesn't it? Somebody said Marcus Rashford's new role at Man United should be sat on the bench. I knew that was coming. Look, in relation to Marcus Rashford, I would not be surprised if he played in behind the striker or up front. I would not be surprised if Amorim used him as a striker, because realistically, beyond Rasmus, he's probably the most direct player we've got. And I think when you look at the way strikers play these days, and there aren't many clubs that utilise them, but if you look at Ollie Watkins, you look at Ivan Toney when he was at Brentford, you look at Erling Haaland at Man City, you look at how we try to use Rasmus, they are very much on the last man direct strikers, and it helps to be physical, and I think that's where Rashford would fall down. He doesn't like a 50-50 challenge, and I think a lot of that's to do with what happened with his back, but you've got to be physical as a number 9. I think if you could have prime Rashford and you could play balls over the top for him to sprint onto, he would cause people problems on the transition. And Amorim's team can be very transitional, as we saw against Manchester City. So I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility, but I think he would have to find physicality again, which he did used to have. And he would have to find that yard of pace that he seems to have lost this season for some reason. So I've said it before, I wouldn't be surprised if he used Rashford as a striker. I don't think it's as far-fetched as people think. But I don't think it would be sustainable, and I don't think he would be successful enough to dislodge Rasmus or the desire to go and get a Gyokeres in the summer. So I think we might see Rashford play up front because there's so many games. Most games now go on for 100 minutes. You need to make substitutions. If Rasmus is injured or Rasmus needs to come off or Rasmus isn't playing well, I wouldn't be surprised if we did see Rashford start as a striker over Xerxes, because I don't think Xerxes looks like an out-and-out striker in the sort of system that Amorim's going to play. I think he'll play him behind. I think Rashford might play him behind. But I don't think it's as far-fetched as some people think that we might actually use Rashford as a striker, as a sort of project or an experiment in the absence of anybody beyond Rasmus. I mean, unfortunately, lots of people have very different ideas about where the priorities are in that United side. I don't think it is a striker. I think a lot of people make lots of predictions about we're going to buy left back, we're going to buy striker. I still think centre back, probably Branthwaite, midfielder, probably Edison, and a winger who can play in behind are probably 3 priorities as much as those. But I think with regards to Rashford, I don't necessarily think that he will find himself out in the wilderness, as some people have predicted. Morning, Mark. If you think Amorim will use wingers instead of fullbacks in the wide position, do you think he'll play Ahmad on the left side and Garnacho on the right to maintain the width and swing crosses into the box, says Armin? Look, I think this question has the potential to run and run and run all the way through until we've seen Amorim manage 4 or 5 games. I don't know what he's going to do because he's never managed in the Premier League before. I don't think he's going to tell anybody what he's going to do before Ipswich either. The Ipswich game is really interesting because it's Ipswich, it's his first game, it's away, but it ain't Man City, it ain't Arsenal. So what do you want to do in that game? Do you want to be composed and, see what's going on whilst not conceding goals? Do you want to go more on the front foot and express yourself from day one? I think sometimes your first game in charge is way more important than many games that come after it. I mean, obviously Arsenal and Man City will be big games coming up in December, but how do you go into that Ipswich game? And the reason I mention that is because if he wants to just back his players to get a result without opening the game up too much, he may well play wing-backs. But if he wants to be what he's about from day one, and he wants to be expansive, he might put Garnacho and Ahmad there. I don't know what he's going to do. It's going to be really interesting because you've got people like Delo, you've got people like Mazraoui, who have been playing consistently because we play with fullbacks, and now potentially we don't. So I think it'll be interesting. I think this is the first time in a long time I've wanted international break to end, says UKG. Why would you not want it to bloody end? It's shit. I did a watch-along for England last night. We were just doing a Q&A. Sanil says, I doubt we'll pay £74 million for Gyokeres, considering we paid for Xerxes to make it over a 5-year payment deal. FFP could be a restraint, says Sanil. Thank you very much. Yeah, look, on Gyokeres, it ain't going to go away. Ben says, what about a Xerxes swap deal? That is also a story that's coming out this morning as well. I think it came out from Court Offside that Manchester United would like to offer up Xerxes as a swap deal for Gyokeres. I don't know how that works. I don't know whether Sporting would want Xerxes. I think he's a good player, but does he fit with the way? What's Sporting's style of play going to be now? Are they going to try and stick with a 3-4-3? Are they going to go and play a different system? So look, Xerxes is a good player, and I'm not for 1 minute saying that we're trying to offload dead wood. I don't think we should be offloading Xerxes yet anyway. I think it's a mistake. What if Xerxes goes off back to Italy or somewhere else and does really well? We haven't really given him a fair chance. So Xerxes, I don't see going anywhere anytime soon. But you are absolutely correct. Finding £70 million for a striker in the summer when there are other priorities or other positions that need money spending on them as well. I don't think United are that club anymore that spends that amount of money on one player. I really don't. And I do feel I feel bad for the likes of Xerxes sometimes, because I don't think I think he's a player that's just constantly being linked with going back to Italy or being in a swap deal with Sporting or this, that and the other. And I don't think it's fair, because I don't actually think he's been given a fair crack of the whip. I mean, you've got Anthony saying he's not leaving Man United because he wants another go under a new manager. He's been here over 2 years. Xerxes barely been here 2 months. So, and also one thing I will say is that I don't think this is being discussed enough. When you look at the transfer window and you look at analysing the transfer window over the last Premier League era of 30 years, and I've heard people like Pep Guardiola talk about this over the years. I think Jose Mourinho has, and you can figure it out for yourself. When you talk about a transfer, so if Man United signed Gyokeres, the actual percentage that he will be successful when you take into every Premier League transfer is 60%. There's a 60% chance that he will be successful. Now, taking it on an individual, you'd probably go it's a lot higher because Premier League, there's opportunities. He's playing in a system. It's probably a very high chance he'll be successful. But if you take every transfer in Premier League history and try and figure out what's been successful and what's been a flop, and flop would be disaster and successful would be not necessarily world class, but you end up, you do a job. It's around 60% that clubs aim for. If you can get a 60% hit rate, it's deemed to be good. Look at Ineos. I know it's only year one, but look at Ineos. I think Mazraoui is clearly a success. De Ligt is becoming a success. Yoro, well, he hasn't played yet, but you would hope he's going to be a success. Agate, I think, is on the pathway to being a success, which means Xerxes, which means we're somewhere between 60 and 80% on our success rate with the signings that we've made so far. Obviously, people have got to go on a journey, and it's too soon to say whether they're a success or not, because if you look at the first summer of Jose, Zlatan, Pogba, Bailly looked very good in the first season, and then ultimately weren't necessarily. But I think that it's incredible to me that people want to write Xerxes off so soon. And I think that Ineos have done a very good job in recruitment, and they wanted Xerxes. So if Mazraoui's been an instant success, Dalot and Agate are on the pathway to success, Yoro we haven't seen yet, then does it not stand to reason that Xerxes might be the slow burner success? Because not everybody's going to hit the ground running, is what I'm going to say. Look at Onana. People aren't talking about Onana being replaced. I've not heard anybody say we need a goalkeeper. And yet 6 months ago, when Ten Hag was in trouble, I think even I said, I think one of the first things a new manager will do is look at Onana and go, whatever about playing out from the back, but he is not a good shot stopper and I need a shot stopper. Look at Onana this season. There is no way that Amorim is going to be looking at that position next summer. It just won't be. I think we'll bring in a backup goalkeeper, but that's not going to happen. And that is a prime example of how sometimes with a transfer, it's year two before they actually look like they're a good player. And I'm not going to regret or apologise for analysing Onana in that first season. I mean, he cost us Champions League football. When he went to the AFCON in January, people wanted him, people were hoping he was going to go early and come back late. He got a lot of criticism. He made a lot of mistakes. And I think it was a fair assessment towards the end of last season to go, if Ten Hag does get sacked, Onana's probably finished because it's Ten Hag signing that we probably didn't need to make. You look at him now and, fair play. He looks settled. He looks confident. We're not going to be looking to change that position, and rightly so. But if I'd said this any point last season, I think the vast majority would have said, you're drunk. So judging signings in their first few months or first season can be a massive mistake. Would you prefer Ruben to establish a solid foundation and style of play but fail to get European football, or get a precarious top four playing Ollie Ball, says Zero Connection? I think I've answered this before. I don't want short-term success for long-term failure again. I want long-term success. I will happily sacrifice European football this year if it means we, root out the problems and build properly. We've got to build a foundation this time that's stable. Morning, Mark. No more last chance saloon for these players. Play well or move on. Simples. First few games will be interesting for sure. What are your predictions, says Tom? I think we'll beat Ipswich and Everton and Bodo Glimt. I think he'll win his first 3 games. Then we go away to Arsenal, which I think will be a draw. Then we're at home to Forest, which I think we will win. I believe there might be another Europa League game in there somewhere, which I think we will win. Then we've got Man City away, which I think, anything can happen in that. Be tough. Spurs away in the Cup, I think will be very tough for some reason. I just think quarterfinal of the Carabao Cup away to Spurs will be tough. Bournemouth at home, I'd expect us to win. But I'm expecting wins. I'm expecting a lot of wins, but I think there are 3 games in there before Christmas that are tough. I think Spurs away in the Carabao Cup, Man City and Arsenal away in the league. They're tough games. There. Hi, Mark from Chicago here. Oh, somebody just said, when's Amorim's interview coming out? So Man United have done an Amorim interview. They did it yesterday. It is due out today. I suppose the timing of it is dependent on a few things around when Manchester United want to put that out. I would expect it to be out. I mean, knowing Man United, they'll probably drop it at 3 o'clock, just about when I'm doing my FIFA career mode. Yeah, you know, because I'm playing in the Europa League final. I mean, what's the real quiz? Amorim's first interview or my Europa League final on Legendary in season 2 on the AFC? But no, if that happens, we'll put it back. But I think it's I think it'll be due out probably any time from early afternoon, I would expect it. But it is going to come out today because the interview is in the bag. And it'll be very interesting. You know, I think that it's not look, I think his first press conference next week will be interesting as well. Probably be next Thursday, I would imagine. But yeah, look, we're going to get his first interview. Hi, Mark, from Chicago here. I can't wait for Ipswich. I'm very excited to see what Amorim brings to the team. It feels very different this time, says Matt. And Zero Connection says, would you prefer Ruben to establish a solid foundation? I've done that one, haven't I? Thank you very much, Zero Connection. Thanks very much with that. Does he have his work permit yet, says Greg. I don't think Man United have ever been worried about his work permit. And I would imagine it will probably come in today, considering he's meant to be taking training on Monday. So I don't think they work on... I think they get the weekend off in that department, is what I'm trying to say. So I don't think they do emergency work permits over the weekend. So I would imagine that Man United have that. And maybe that's why they're waiting to do the official interview. I don't know. But that will be today. Just wanted to talk about Nicky Butt, actually, on about Garnacho. Quite interesting, actually, because it's sort of... I like a lot of what Nicky Butt says. I mean, he works at Man United as this sort of person that was the bridge between the youth team and the first team. And obviously he left. I think he got very frustrated with the way the club was being run under John Murtagh and the Glazers and Richard Arnold and Ed Woodward. Obviously, he wasn't a part of the movement that was around Ineos. He'd gone way before that. So basically... we've heard a lot about Garnacho this week, and I think that's very interesting. But he's basically said this about Garnacho. He's talking to Paul Scholes, and he basically said that the way we see Manchester United as the be-all and end-all. So when we were at Manchester United, this is the place we want to play. But a lot of players see Real Madrid and Barcelona as the next level. And a player that may well be doing that in the next few years is Garnacho. But he was talking more generally. He wasn't saying that Garnacho is going to go and play for Real Madrid and Barcelona anytime soon. But he was just talking about this thing that I think we're all aware of, and it's why it caught my eye. I've said it for years on here. It's not that Garnacho is going to go to Real Madrid next summer or the summer after, or Barcelona. It's just that culturally, or the ambition that players have, even though the Premier League is the best league in the world, Real Madrid still consistently win the Champions League more than any other team. And they just have this aura and this magnetism. And that's what Nicky Butt was talking about. It's like people get very self-conscious about it, almost bitter about it. And in essence, there are a lot of players out there that just still see Real Madrid and Barcelona as that next level, even though they might be playing for Man United in the Premier League, even if we're doing well. I mean, look, Ronaldo's the prime example of that. But I think it's right, and I think it's true, and I don't think it's ever going to change. I think it's slightly different if you're English, and maybe with the likes of Mainu, if United get good, we would be able to keep hold of him. But that is not something you're going to change. I mean, it's been all my life, and it's been a massive frustration. I just don't know. It's not a frustration if you're a Real Madrid fan. It's great. But as a Man United fan, you sometimes look at it and I go, you know, when Ronaldo went, he just won the Ballon d'Or. We'd been to two Champions Leagues finals in a row. We'd won the Premier League 2 years in a row. And you're losing the best player in the world, in my opinion, to go and make Real Madrid better. And it's frustrating. I don't think we're in a position at the moment to moan about it anyway, because we're not even a team that finishes in the top 4 regularly. But I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. And I certainly don't think it's a stick to beat the likes of a Garnacho or an Ahmad or any other player at Man United that might end up becoming really good, that Real Madrid go, yeah, let's get hold of them. And I thought it was well put by Nicky Butt, and I think it's another reminder of why these stories tend to happen, why there is this perception, especially around Garnacho, is that there is that aspirational motivator in players. I mean, look, for example, if Martinez was the best centre-back in the Premier League and Real Madrid came knocking on the door, he might fancy it. Bruno Fernandes might have fancied it 2 years ago. It's just there, and that is why hopefully we're going to... I don't mind having that problem, by the way. We haven't had this problem for 10 years. We haven't had Real Madrid knocking on our door, really, for 10 years, have we? You're a victim of your own success. If we can create a football club that is recruiting well enough that Real Madrid want our players, that is developing well enough that Real Madrid want our players, then we will be in a position in the league where I'll be very, very happy. You're a victim of your own success if Real Madrid want your players at the end of the day. And I will take that as collateral on that journey. I'm not that obsessed about one particular player that I'm worried that, oh, if we do well, they might go to Real Madrid. It's an aspirational thing, and it's not even a non-British thing anymore. When you look at the likes of Gareth Bale did it from Spurs, Jude Bellingham's ended up doing it. So I think Nicky Butt's right, because I think Man United, if we want to compete with that, I suppose the argument would be you've got to be winning, you've got to be competing for the league, you've got to be competing for the Champions League. I mean, look, let me paint a picture. What I'm trying to say is, if Man United were winning the Champions League, winning the Premier League with one of the best stadiums in the world, suddenly it's very different from struggling to finish in the top 6, not even in the Champions League, in a stadium that's been allowed to rust. So we've got to create the platform for our players before we start even moaning about them potentially wanting to move on to Real Madrid or Barcelona. MMA Takedown says, Mike Tyson or Jake Paul? Couldn't give a shit. And if you're watching it, well done. Absolutely got no interest. Rashford is not supposed to be sold now, says D. Just looking at the poll, should Rashford play as a striker? 69% of you are saying no, and 31% of you are saying yes. I think probably about right, 70-30. If I'm starting... Should Rashford be our starting striker? No. Should he be an option that we can utilise in a squad that is a little bit thin in certain areas? Yes. I think there is certainly an option there to do that. And Manchester United and Amorim should do it. Just had a bit of story coming out from Tyrone Marshall, who's the Manchester Evening News. United are still waiting on visa approvals for Ruben Amorim and his backroom staff, due to take training for the first time early next week. Well, we've still got a whole day today, and as I said, I'm not too hot on whether these things can come through over the weekend. I would imagine that's a governmental department in the UK, and I'd be very surprised if they're working at the weekends. But there is still time today. And we are a multi-billion-pound football club, so I can't imagine that the desk that's working with that, wherever the Department of Visas isn't getting a boot up the arse saying, this is Manchester United's manager, can we sort it out? Oh, no, I'm just working on this visa for this guy who's coming over from America to work in WH Smith for a couple of months before Christmas. That was the next one. Move it out the way and work on Manchester United's new manager. You're fired. Yeah, so I think I'm not worried about it. The fact they haven't got it yet, obviously, isn't ideal, but I'm not worried about it. And I don't think United are worried about it. They've not been worried about it all week. Bison says they don't take long if they're done at an express price. Patrick Lynch says, Irish and British people see United and Liverpool as the pinnacle. For European and South American players, Barca and Real Madrid are that. It's cultural. Zion says, do you think it's time to create a new era with young players, Ahmad Garnacho, instead of trying the Rashford project again? Please, without mention Bruno, says Zion. Well, I think we got the iconic picture, didn't we, last year, where you had Garnacho, Rasmus and Mainu sat, together. Last February, January, was it? And I said at the time, this could be really good for the likes of Bruno and Rashford, because there's a new batch, and that's what happens in life. Like whether you're an actor, whether you're a singer, whether you're a band, you have a period in time where you are hot, and then you have a time when you're not. And the real trick is that when the next batch come through, is that you retain relevancy in a more experienced advisory role, so that what you've learnt from being hot, you maintain your career and are still respected. And that rings true when you look at music. It rings true when you look at actors. There will always be new kids on the block. But your job, when you're not that, is to become respected and, part of the scene. And, when you look at acting, if you look at the new batch, and it's probably a little bit outdated now, but maybe 10 years ago, you had the likes of DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, people like that coming through. What's his name? Jason Bourne, Matthew Damon. They're one person. But then you've still got Pacino, De Niro, who maintain that respect, even though they're not, the new thing coming through. And I think I hope that that's going to continue to happen. I would like to see the Mainus, the Garnachos, the Amads, the Rasmuses, the Yoros be that focal, famous five, vibrant young players that are growing. And I would like to see the Rashfords, the Brunos, the Casemiros, the Ananas as the established, respected players. And then in a couple of years, you pass the torch and a couple of more, 3 or 4 more players come through. I don't get how Rashford and Bruno have become the same like McFred. The conversation should only be on Rashford, in my opinion, says Zion. Jig says, how is Rashford too weak as striker? He's had his best recent form in that position. Mate, I think you've been playing FIFA. What the fuck are you talking about? When has he played as a striker recently? Mate, you get out, go for a walk, go and touch some grass, because what are you talking? You've been playing FIFA career mode, haven't you, till 3 o'clock in the morning with Rashford as a striker, and you've won the bloody league. What are you talking about? He's had his best form as a striker. He bloody played as a striker. What are you talking about? Plays on the wing, mate. Bloody hell. You make yourself look all right, Pratt. You're as bad as me going live 2 minutes early by mistake. There was a good question that came in, actually, from Keel. He says, do you think Rashford has a medicated long-term injury? Genuinely think that he doesn't like a 50-50 challenge ever since he's done his back injury. Got no inside information at all on that, but I do think that there is some sort of lingering issue in relation to the physical side of the game, because it's almost been abandoned compared to 4 years ago, where it was a big part of his game. He's not like that anymore. He's not. God, he's turning into the bloody Rashford show again. Rashford can be good when he wants to be, but like Sancho, he needs an arm around him, says Slow Sports News. Okay. Back five will never work in the Premier League. Will be found out fast, says John. Should have given John the job. He knows it all. What? Just. I'm not going to leave that, by the way. Why would a back five not work at Manchester United or any other club? Because it's not a back five. It's a back three. It's 3 centre backs. I think people need to modernise and open their mind in relation to what it is we're actually doing. It's a 3-4-3. There is nothing about 5 that is 3. It's a 3-4-3. And the reason it's called a 3-4-3 and not a 5-2-3 is because the emphasis is on attack. Now, people will say, when we're defensive, it's a back five. And that's what it is. So it's about, it's not wrong to say it's a back five, because when we're defensive, it will be a back five. Yeah, well, if the emphasis was on defence, we would call it a 5-2-3. The reason it's called a 3-4-3 is because the emphasis is on attack. I think it can work in the Premier League. I think we've seen it work against Premier League opposition when Sporting have done it. I think it's going to open people's minds massively, because I think the big thing that people obsess about is the two behind the striker and the wing back / wingers. But tell me your experience of a back three, because you won't have one at Man United. People obsess about the wing backs because they're thinking about, they're indoctrinated into 2 centre-backs, 3 centre-backs, 2 holding midfielders, one of which can drop into the centre-backs. This wing-back obsession may be completely and utterly irrelevant, because they may well be wingers who help out defensively but don't actually play as full-backs at any point, because the centre-back can move across from side to side, the holding midfielder can drop in. So I think it's an obsession that really you've got to watch and see. Nobody can predict what's going to happen. The only evidence we've got is what he did at Sporting, but what he did at Sporting doesn't necessarily transform. What Mourinho did at Porto wasn't a blueprint, word for word, of what he did at Chelsea. Porto won a Champions League and a Europa, and what was a UEFA Cup then? They beat Celtic, didn't they, the year before? So Porto beat Celtic, I think it was, in the UEFA Cup, and then they won the Champions League the following year, both with Mourinho. And then he came to the Premier League and smashed the shit out of it with Chelsea. And across those 3 years, the difference from the Chelsea side to the Porto side that won the UEFA Cup was incredible. In fact, the Porto side that won the UEFA Cup was absolutely ridiculed at the time for its negative football. A lot of people felt Celtic should have won that game. So just because Mourinho played a certain way at times at Porto doesn't mean he did it at Chelsea. And just because Amorim has played this style of football at Sporting doesn't mean he'll do it at Manchester United. Do you know what Amorim's view on bringing through the youth is? Says United Nick. I believe it's good. I don't believe Man United would go near a manager that wasn't about promoting youth. We've invested so much money into it that I imagine that will continue. Rack says, I'd love to see Pedro from Brighton. I'd love to see Pedro from Brighton. I'd love to see Kuna from Wolves. I think there are some good players out there. Conte won the league with a 3-4-3 at Chelsea, says Clapped Boy. Paul says, Rashford's a confidence player, so I'll never understand why nobody can shut up slagging him off. We are harming ourselves, destroying his confidence. No, I disagree with that, Paul. I mean, you know, you look at the reaction to Garnacho not celebrating and people are saying you're in the wrong job if you don't want to celebrate. I think that's a bit harsh. And I think every debate is, you know, layered. But what you're saying, Paul, is that after so many years of, you know, up and down performances, we should still be there going, don't worry, keep going, it's fine. And you can't do that in competitive sport. Pep Guardiola's not going to do that when he's got a winger that's not performing. He's not going to go, don't worry about it. I know you're a low confidence player. You're amazing. Keep playing. Doku, sit down. Savio, sit down. You keep going, mate. You keep trying. It's competitive sport. You can have an arm around a player, but it's not the job of everybody to keep saying it doesn't matter if you're playing badly, just keep trying. It's competitive sport. So criticism is always going to be there. Jack says, you're getting me through my wisdom teeth removal. Ended up deep into some watch along early this morning. Loving Amorim's aura. I see a Klopp, says Jack. I hope so. I really hope you're right, Jack. And I hope your recovery goes well. It can be very painful, that. Scott B says, Malacia has come out and said he had to be treated abroad due to squad crisis and staff shortage. Interviewing The Athletic. Keep up the great work, says Scott. I'd read a little bit about Malacia's comeback because obviously he's done this interview and he was out for a very long time and there was all sorts of rumours about witness protection and dating royal family. And he's basically said none of it's true, of course. And he was back in the Netherlands with family and friends recovering. I don't know what the truth story is around Malacia, and I doubt very much in his own interview he's going to admit any shortcomings on his part. But the strong rumour has always been, and United have done this before, is that player decides to use certain surgeon and it happened with Martinez, and that particular operation doesn't go very well and ends up with another operation. So there are always two sides to the coin. I think it's very easy to chuck blame at United because our fitness record's been terrible. And I would actually say, why are Man United allowing players to use their own surgeons anyway? We own the player at the end of the day. But it's been a long road for Malacia. A long, long road. And by the time he actually plays a first team game for Manchester United, it will be over 18 months, which is just incredible. And you think about the mental toll that would take on any player. You've basically lost a year and a half of your career. It's a pivotal time. I think he was 23 when he did that, wasn't he? Is he 25 now? So, yeah, whatever you think about Malacia's future, I've always said, I think it's touch and go. I think when you miss that amount of football, and how good was he before, and how good he'll be afterwards, and how fit he can stay afterwards. Look, the minimum I hope he gets is back playing football at some level. The maximum I hope he gets is that he's back playing at a very high level for Manchester United. I hope it doesn't go the way of tries to get back, doesn't work, and it's just a career of injury. So, because it's one of the hardest things to deal with for any professional footballer is long-term injuries, because you can deal with not being good enough. Many of us do. You know, I wasn't good enough. I wanted to be a professional footballer. I wasn't good enough. You can deal with that, and you can respect those that get there. And you can deal with that as a professional footballer if you play badly or you don't achieve your potential, etc. That's on you. But injury is the most frustrating thing in the world, because you never get to show what you can do. You never get to realise your potential because injury just stops you from doing it. So, yeah, I hope he can get back. I really, really do. I do have concerns. I think you've got to be realistic about anything to do with Manchester United and injury. And I'm realistic to the point that 18 months is a long time. And I look at Lavia at Chelsea, who's missed a shorter period of time, but basically a year. He's come back and done very well for Chelsea and has been out certainly one time, maybe twice, with other injuries. And that's what tends to happen a lot. When you've been out for a long time, you come back, you fix the problem, and then other parts of your body starts to break down. So let's hope it doesn't happen. Tala says, I just want to say we appreciate the videos over the years. Hope Man United can make a comeback. Oh, yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great. Would you say Mazraoui is our best deal since Bruno, says Sanil? I think it's a bit early to say that, because there has been good signings who've hit the ground running and you go, they look really good, and it's not even Christmas yet. So I would hold judgment on it, but I'm confident that Mazraoui is going to be one of our best signings of the last decade, because he just oozes consistency and quality. And I just couldn't believe him that first 20 minutes against Chelsea at left back. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The technical ability on the ball. It was incredible. And then the first 5 minutes of the half against Pauk was just amazing as well. He set the tempo for the passing. Would you say Mazraoui? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much to Scott B and Sanil, by the way, and Jack Hutton. Savage says, Mazraoui has been a breath of fresh air, and he certainly has. I agree with you on that one. Yes, there is an interview with Amorim coming out today, and we will obviously react to that when it happens. Looking forward to that. Eric, Verinda's talking about Eric visiting India for herbal rejuvenation. Okay. I tell you what, as a side note, I was looking last night. There'll be at least 5 people who do this now, because when I say this always happens. So last night, I went and looked at, because obviously we're going to be doing Amorim's first Man United interview. So I went and looked at Ten Hag's first interview reaction on the United stand. And then I looked at Mourinho's. And the first thing I noticed was, obviously I look different, but the first thing I noticed, not making it about me, is that when you look at the thumbnail and the picture of Ten Hag on his first interview, and then you look at the picture of Ten Hag when he got sacked, and it's only been 2 years, bloody hell. There's a lot of grey. And it's the same with Jose as well. I mean, it's crazy how stressful that job is, how big that job is, and you can visually see it when you look at the sacked picture and the new manager picture. Ollie's, Oren's right, Ollie as well. Like 2 or 3 years, and it ages you by at least 10. It's incredible, really. Look, Amorim's built. You know, he obviously gets himself down the gym. He's energetic. He's got that European grooming going on. He's almost. I don't know enough about Portugal and how men in Portugal look after themselves, but I spent a lot of time in Italy, and they've got the vavavoom. No, that's France, but he's a well-tailored guy, Amorim. And what I don't want to see in 2 years' time is Amorim sacked. He's grown a beard. It's grey. His hair's gone grey, and he's walking around in a Primark tracksuit. I don't want to see that. I want to see his. I want to see him on the front of GQ with the most stylish man in football. United fan says, I love the streams and I'm new to the channel. I just wanted to ask something that could Gyokeres transfer go through? Sorry. Sorted. We started with that. I think the interesting thing about Gyokeres, and the reason I brought in the Braga president comment, was that he said, really good player. You can see why Amorim would want him. He gave 2 hints away. One of them was Amorim gets very obsessed about certain players that play for him. There are certain players that he loves. Now, a lot of people have said that Pedro Gonçalves, isn't it? He could end up at Man United, even though he's hardly got any Portuguese caps and he's 26. He could end up at Man United because Amorim's obsessed with him. So he does have players that he gets obsessed with, and maybe Gyokeres is that. That's what the Braga president said, who obviously had Amorim there. The second thing the Braga president said was that Gyokeres, in his opinion, may not work at every single European club, i.e., he works really well in Amorim's system, and that means that he might not work at others. So if Amorim is obsessed with Gyokeres, and Gyokeres is really useful to this system, even if Rasmus does well, we do need another striker who's good in the system. And I think too many people see it as Rasmus out, Gyokeres in. I see it as Gyokeres is 27 in the summer and Rasmus is 21. So you've got a young striker, an older striker, playing 90 minutes 3 times a week. It works. It really works. But I think the sticking point is 70 million quid for a striker when you're probably going to need 3 or 4 positions as well, and where United find that money. But, obviously, I think Ineos are going to try and deliver to this manager what he wants, and they certainly have got a very high success rate at the moment in relation to transfers, and they certainly did get Ten Hag very good players. So I'm very confident that they will get Amorim good players as well. And I also think that Gyokeres coming into the Premier League at Manchester United would massively benefit someone like Rasmus as well. Because there are similarities, and I'm happy with Xerxes, but they are very different, and there's nothing wrong with different, but I sometimes think that there is something very positive about it as well. Right, I've got to get that call. Thanks everyone for watching. Actually, I don't think I do. No, I don't. But I am going to finish the show. Spam. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you smash a like on the video. We are going to be live today with a few shows. 8 o'clock show tonight, of course. Looking forward to that. Get a glass of red. 3 o'clock today, EAFC, Man United career mode. Goldbridge in the Europa League final playing Legendary. Even if you don't like computer games, this could be interesting. Tomorrow, all day, I've got my charity stream. Get involved in that. But we have got an Amorim interview dropping at some point, which we'll be reacting to as well. So get ready for that. Alta says, I'm not trying to ruin the mood, but United switching to a back 3, new stadium, firing Sir Alex, it feels like Ineos are destroying United. And yet, I feel completely the opposite. I don't believe Sir Alex Ferguson was fired, by the way. I don't like the idea of a new stadium, but I do think that we are innovating and changing, and it's time we did that. Certainly on the pitch as well, mainly. Take care, everyone. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe. I'll speak to you in a bit.